Hello, going to talk about MFA today. So there's this tool I wrote called AWS MFA Secure, and this adds MFA Series support to your AWS credentials for standard IAM users. So this MFA Series property is actually supported with assumed roles, but it's not supported currently for standard IAM users, and I need it for a project, so I came up with this. So I'm gonna go through kind of the setup, and then I'll kind of, I guess, show you a demo. So the first thing you have to do is you configure your credentials, and then you add this MFA serial here, okay? And you have to pull that up after you set up MFA and all that. Then you have to alias your AWS command, and what that allows the tool to do is intercept the AWS command and then basically prompt you for the MFA token. So that's kind of this is it kind of achieved. And then you just use your AWS CLI like normal. So here's AWS S3 list, and here's is exporting a MFA profile, and then here's the prompt for the token, and then here's the basically the results. And then if you run it again, it reuses those temporary credentials until they expire. Okay. Okay. To set up MFA, I actually recommend going through this tutorial right here. Enable your users to configure their own credentials and MFA settings. In this tutorial, you'll set up an MFA user, and then you'll actually set up this quite restrictive policy. This policy down here, if you scroll to the bottom, has a deny rule that says if multi-factor auth present is false, so you've logged in without multi-factor, then apply the deny rule, which basically says you deny everything except for these actions, except for this white list of actions. So this is kind of like a double, maybe even triple negative here. But essentially this says you're not allowed to do anything once you log in or making API calls unless you've done it via MFA. Okay. This policy was also only allows you to add the MFA device if you have the direct link. I made it slightly looser by just basically doing get star and list star so you can navigate to it from the IAM user console. I'll show you the policy. Okay, so the policy, here's the MFA user. Oh, and here's everything kind of pre-baked set up already. Here's a demo user and MFA user. They're not assigned to groups yet, okay? So, but actually both of these users are gonna have access and or not gonna be restricted by MFA. And only this MFA user actually has the device associated because that's what I need for the demo. Okay, so that's already been set up, but none of these users actually belong to the group I've set up yet. So here's the MFA group, and here's the force MFA. Okay, and here is the policy that's has this deny rule. And like I said, I made this slight change right here to make it a little looser, just so you can navigate to it. Okay, so that I think covers all the background information we need. Right now, because this guy is not associated to a group, he's going to be able to get through. I should also show you the setup. So here's the config setup. I'm going to also show you just the credential setup too to make this easy. These keys will be rotated after this video, so there's no even point in trying. Okay, but here's the setup. Here's demo, and here's MFA. Okay, and here's MFA user. Okay, and here's the keys, and here's the serial thing that's add support. Okay, but look, I said is because this user is not associated with that group yet, he's going to be able to get right through. Okay, so I'll demonstrate this. Okay, export AWS profile demo AWS S3 list. Okay, so that demo is going to get through, and MFA is going to be able to get through too, actually. Okay, because he's not associated with that group, which is associated with that force MFA policy. Okay, so I'm going to go to this user now. I'm going to go ahead and add the group, this guy. Okay, so that's loading. Okay. So I noticed IAM takes like, I don't know, 20 seconds or so to start restricting access. Oh, it's already actually working right now. Okay, so that's good. So that basically demonstrates that that's restricting access. And I'm going to go ahead and go, let's run this again inline for demo, because that guy, he's not in that group, so he should be able to get through the bucket and he can see the bucket. But this guy, he's being denied. Okay. So how do we resolve this, okay? So first thing we did was set up the credentials, which we did already. Now we have to run the alias, or set up the alias. Let's go to the README. Here's the alias, and I just recommend once this is all working, just set it in your bash profile, so then you don't have to do this again and again. Okay, so now the alias is working, so if I call the same command now, it's gonna actually prompt me this time for the MFA token code, okay? So I'm gonna go and grab the token code and paste it right here. So there it is, okay? And now I should be able to get access to it right there. So now I actually reuse the same one. So it's working now. And you notice it actually created this folder right here because it basically writes the credentials right here, the temporary ones, with the session token expiration here, and reuses it until it expires, okay? So that's kind of good. That's looking all good. And the default expiration is about 12 hours. So that's looking good. The last thing I want to cover, or actually a couple more things I want to cover, is so what the alias kind of does is it just simply delegates to this guy right here. This guy is actually what the alias is doing. So let me unalias this, unalias AWS, okay? And then let me just call AWS version, okay? So, and then let me alias, or let me call this other one, or you call it version. See, what that's doing is just is the same thing. So I'm gonna alias again, actually. So where's my alias? Okay, so this is actually just, it's going from the alias to this AWS MFA secure session back to the original command wherever it was installing your file system. Okay, so that's kind of how this trick is kind of working. And then you just basically that's why auto completion works. That's why basically the commands are just like regular CLI commands. I want to explain that so you kind of understand how it's working underneath the scenes. Okay, now this is going to basically allow the AWS CLI to work because it's being decorated and it's intercepting that call is going to prompt you and then use kind of temporary credentials, MFA secure temporary credentials, right? Now some tools, maybe like you're using a Ruby tool or a Python tool or some other tool, right? But that tool doesn't support MFA basically authentication yet. Then what you can actually do is just export all these shared variables out here, these environmental variables, and then that's gonna, if the author of that tool wrote it by using kind of like the default credential setup, then it should just work just fine. So I'm gonna demonstrate how this kind of works too. And since I've already basically authenticated, it's going to use the same cache, so it's going to export it right away. So there's the export right there. But let's say I'm going to show you another command, clean. Okay, so that's actually going to wipe away all of your session credentials right there. So now I'm going to run exports again. Okay, so if I run exports again, it's going to prompt me this time. So I got to get this token, throw in here. Okay, and there. Now it's basically spitting out all the values that we kind of need there. Now, so what you can kind of do is this is a script meant to be eval. So you just run that. And by the way, if you're running this for the first time and there's this prompt here, you don't have to worry about this being eval because that's being written standard error, not standard out. Okay, so if I run that, what that's going to do is that's going to actually export all these values. So I'll prove it by just echoing one of them. Okay, so now if your tool doesn't support MFA, actually you're going to use MFA now because you're using the environmental variables, and the environmental variables take usually a higher precedence than the tools unless they've literally hard coded the way they're managing credentials. So and hopefully they haven't. So that's kind of one way to use the tool, even if or that's one way to use MFA, even if, like I say, a tool you're using doesn't support MFA yet. You can essentially just export these variables outside into your shell. Okay. There's another kind of cool command here, MFA. Let's do a help. MFA unsets. Okay, so this is another script, or generates another script that's meant to be eval also. This will just unset all the environmental variables that are related to basically handling the credentials. So there, I just unset it there. So that's kind of a nice way to do it. Okay, the last thing I want to cover was I cover exports. This is a Ruby AWS SDK extension. So if you have a Ruby library out there and you want to add MFA support, you just actually have to add the gem to your library, your gem, whatever, your project. Then you just literally run this one require line, and that adds MFA support. And it does a very similar thing with with decorating the current kind of code. But instead of decorating the AWS CLI with Alias, it actually it prepends a module that's going to actually change the AWS credentials main class. And then basically intercept it and then prompt you and all that business, the same thing. Okay, so this is actually being used for another tool I wrote called Jets, and actually a couple tools now because I rolled it all out. Jets, Lono, UFO, Cody. There's a couple tools and that BoltOps runs that basically actually supports all this now because of it just requires kind of one line to be added to your Ruby gem there. Okay, this is only supporting on Linux. Doesn't support Windows. Windows, you're kind of here are some links, useful links for you to kind of figure that out. But you basically have to manually set the exports in however you do it with like a environment, with PowerShell or whatever you do in Windows. But that is pretty much it. I wanted just to show you this tool. This is a tool that I just have to write because currently it's not supported. Hopefully, support is added, and then literally you just remove this tool and then you kind of move on. That'd be amazing when that happens. Okay, hopefully you found this video helpful. If you like videos like this, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. Encourage me to create more content like this, and share with your friends. That'd be really appreciated. All right, cheers.